Lightbearers, Treasure in Fragile Vessels. Take 1, by Elliot Dillon. Dreamer, Chapter 10. The next morning, they continued their journey, which took them to a section of woods that was enclosed by a barbed wire fence. "This is inconvenient," stated Noah as she stared at the rusty barricade. Turning to Ezekiel before he could say anything, she told him, "No, I can't cut it with my sword." Letting out a frustrated sigh, he waited as Noah and Bob discussed the best way to get across. As they talked, he approached the fence. His brother and he had encountered fences like this all the time, and the answer was as simple as taking hold of the wire and lifting it up. Just as he was about to do that, Noah cried out for him to stop. His hand was already there, and his mind had not completely received the order as he started to clasp his fingers around the metal. Before he did, Noah reached out her hand in order to pull his away. In the same moment, Bob grabbed a hold of Ezekiel's shoulders and pulled him back so that his hand was no longer in the path of Noah's rescue. Having not expected the removal of his hand, Noah continued on as her hand took a hold of the wire instead of his own. Just as he was about to ask what the big deal was, he saw the metal spark as a jolt of electricity ran across it. Luckily, the jolt wasn't strong, as Noah was able to release her hand. As she did, he saw on her palm a smoking scar from where her skin had touched the live wire, along with pricks of blood where the barbs had poked her. "Oh man, I didn't know!" Wincing from the pain, she assured him it was all right. "I should have said something. I forgot you didn't know they added it." Leaving his side, Bob helped Noah stand up and checked her body for any other wounds. Not wanting the attention, she assured him she was fine as she pushed him away. "Let's just find a safe way around this. There's got to be a way through." Taking the lead, she led them along the fence line as they looked for any breaks in the wiring or flow of electricity. As they went, he noticed Noah holding her hand to her chest as she winced every now and then as if electricity was still running through her. "Noah, are you sure?" Cutting him off, she pointed ahead as she said, "There!" At a section of the fence, a tree had fallen over in a storm, forming a bridge across to the other side. Using it, they were able to get over safely. Once on the other side, Bob insisted they take a break so he could treat Noah's hand. Seeing that they would not move on without doing it, Noah agreed as Bob had Ezekiel take a jug to a stream he'd heard through the trees. When he returned, he found Bob putting the moves on his female companion. Okay. Ezekiel wasn't sure if it was flirting by alien standards, but by the dorky grin on the guy's face as he bandaged her hand, it couldn't be anything else. Though they could have just been talking about the source, he doubted it from the uncomfortable looks Noah kept shooting the older boy, as if to signal she wanted the subject changed. Not really caring if she did or did not like him, Ezekiel moved in quickly as he broke them apart and told the older boy to lay off. "Hey, I think it's up to her if I leave her alone or not," retorted Bob, who suddenly looked 10 times bigger than Ezekiel as he rose to his full height. "I forgot how much bigger he is than me." Stepping back from the larger teen as Bob stepped toward him, the two were suddenly separated as Noah leapt between them, pushing them apart. "Whoa, come on guys, let's not fight over me. I know I'm adorable, but let's remember we have a mission to do. We don't have time for love triangles." Pausing for a moment as if to consider what she'd said, she got a sickened look on her face as she shuddered. "Anyway, I'm hungry. Let's eat." Pulling out the food she'd stored from the previous day, she handed each their share before taking a seat. With his own food in hand, he placed himself next to Noah as he stared at Bob, as if to dare him to try and sit on the other side. Though Bob looked like he wanted to challenge him, he took a seat on a log opposite their own. As they ate, Ezekiel noticed a sound and turned to find Noah humming as she happily ate her meal. "Does anything get this girl down?" As she continued, the hum started to sound familiar, but just before he'd caught the tune, Bob rose with a disgruntled grunt. "I'm done. I'll scout ahead." When Noah had finished, she gathered up the things they had taken out to bandage her hand, then turned to Ezekiel as she asked, "Are you ready?" Not being in the mood for white stuff and sour berries again, he had not eaten much of his meal. Instead of forcing himself to eat the rest, he put it back in his pack as he nodded and rose to follow her. "Try not to be so hard on him," advised Noah as they continued their journey. "He still has a lot to learn as a light bearer." "What's that?" She smiled as she said, "It's what we all are. Everyone who bears the light of the source in their hearts and has a desire to share with others is a light bearer." "I thought I was a dreamer." She laughed. "Yes, but you're also a light bearer." "So not all light bearers have swords?" He looked towards the sword which was strapped to her back. Looking back to it as well, she shook her head. "Not all of them use it as I do, but we all use the light to combat the darkness in our own ways. Dreamers use the light to show the world the source. Through them the source speaks so that people might find the light for themselves and stop relying on others, to stop waiting. Waiting for what?" She shrugged. Whatever's keeping them from listening. He was not sure he completely understood, but was sure asking her would only further confuse him. Up ahead, Bob had stopped to wait for them. Together again, the three continued on in silence till Noah started to hum again. Whatever tune she was singing put a spring in her step as she smiled broadly. Looking back to both boys, who were looking annoyed by the fact they had to walk together, she called after them, "Come on, cheer up! It's a beautiful day, and we're on an adventure for the source. Things couldn't be better." Bob let out a heavy sigh before saying, "I don't see how they are even good." "Because the sun is shining." Ezekiel looked at the sky, in which he still did not find any sign of a sun. "The birds are singing." He decided she must have been hearing things, as there were no sounds but that of their feet treading across the twig and leaf-strewn forest ground. "And we're on a mission for the source. How cool is that?" Bob did not seem to have her same sentiment toward their task as he said, "But why did the source have to send us? Couldn't he just send his guardians? If he did that, how would we be blessed? Allowing us to do this kind of work strengthens our relationship with him and our knowledge of the light. Don't you want to have a deeper relationship with him and a firmer grasp of the light?" "I think I already have those things. Like I said, I grew up knowing the light." "Yeah, but you can never stop growing. The source wants us to be always learning, always seeking and growing. There will never be a point when we know everything. That would just be boring." By the look on his face, Ezekiel guessed Bob did not agree. As the girl chirped away about how great it was to learn, Bob started to look like he regretted agreeing to go with him. Ezekiel was also starting to share the sentiment as he almost twisted his ankle for the third time that day. He was tired, hot, and hungry, and he just wanted to go home. If this was hell, he'd do anything to leave it. Gazer, Chapter 11. It was 2 days later when they came upon a city which looked as desolate as the neighborhood. As they traveled through, Lot instructed Jeremiah to move cautiously, as there are eyes everywhere. He could not see how, since the place looked completely abandoned. The girl was so paranoid that even when it started raining, she would not let them take cover in one of the many office buildings. "It's not safe," she told him. After she had disallowed him to go home, he was not sure he trusted anything she said. If he hadn't feared for his life with all the Oni and Tengu running around, he would have left them days ago. He was not there to help them find their stupid gloves, and there was no way he was going to stick around to do so. If he found another portal, he was gone. Seeing a vision of the past homes had renewed this desire, but he knew with Law always nearby he'd never get a chance. The only way he could see himself returning home was if he ran into another group of travelers who would let him leave with them. That way, he could both be protected from the Oni, and since they wouldn't know about his portal jumping, he'd be free and clear to leave as soon as he found one. This was the only solution he could see. More than that, he believed it was best to get away from Law and Momo as soon as possible. The more time he spent with them, the less he trusted the two. Why did Momo really wear a helmet? And would someone who was a good guy really be as skilled at breaking into places as Lot? It made him wonder how much of their stories they were keeping from him. When the rain started to turn to sleet, Lot finally agreed they needed to find shelter. In the basement of one of the buildings, she found a window which she said would be their ticket inside. You know, diamonds really are a girl's best friend, if she knows how to use them. Confused by her words, he asked her what she meant. Pulling off the glove from her left hand, he saw that she was wearing a diamond engagement ring. Though the diamond wasn't big, she showed it off to him as if it was the size of a baseball. When she'd finished, she turned the stone so that it was facing the same way as her palm. Then she used it to cut out a circle large enough for her hand to fit through. "See? That's how you know they're real." She cast a wink at Momo and then unlatched the window. The basement was warm since it contained the building's furnace, which allowed the group to dry off their belongings. While Jeremiah took off his outer clothing to let it dry, Lot found a towel in the basement and used it to dry off Momo's leather outerwear. "He's not actually a man," admitted Lot. "He's just a robot covered in leather." As he did not know how far technology had advanced, Jeremiah was not sure if she was joking or not, and did not really care to find out. Looking back out the window, he watched as the rain made the sky outside look even grayer. What happened to make the world look this way? He hadn't expected an answer, and almost wished he hadn't received one, as Lot replied, "When the planet has been at war for as long as ours has, it's no wonder it looks this way." He looked back at her, afraid of the answer. "How long have we been at war?" "Since the beginning of time." Her answer was serious, but he could not see how. "My planet hasn't been at war forever." "Sure it has. Since its creation, when Thoktakan came in and got the first people to choose his rule over the sources, our planet has been at war. Most of the battling has been invisible to our eyes, and it's really only recently that things have started to show the effects of that long war." She came to stand beside him as she also stared out the window. At one point, I was among those that didn't realize a war was being waged on my behalf. I was just going about my life without a care. But when Oyaban and then Momo shared the love of the source with me, it opened my eyes. Now I can't help but see the desolation. She looked back at him, making his skin go cold as she said, "And once your eyes are open, you can't unsee it." Unsure of how to respond to that, he watched as she headed back to Momo, who was finishing drying himself off. As Lot went back to helping him, Jeremiah found a chair in the corner of the room. Feeling overwhelmed at what he'd just been told, he took a seat in the chair, which creaked under his weight. The next thing he knew, he was asleep, and when he awoke, the rain had stopped and his clothes had dried. After redressing, he looked for Lot and Momo, but did not find them in the small room. Next to where his clothes had been, he noticed a paper, and found it written in the same script as the book Lot had given him. Seriously? She knows I can't read this. Tossing it into the fire, he looked toward the stairs, which led up into the rest of the building. Remembering how Lot had told him they should not enter the upper levels, he hesitated for a moment, then dismissed the worry. Maybe I can actually find someone who will help me get back home. The stairs creaked under the weight of his foot, and again, for a moment, he hesitated in continuing with his plan. A new wave of stubbornness hit, and he continued up the rest of the way. The hallways looked bleak and as abandoned as everywhere else they'd been. Heading up more flights of stairs, the sound of his footsteps sounded hollow in the emptiness of the building. He stopped at a door, hearing a sound inside. When he opened the door, he found the room completely desolate, except for a portal through which he saw a family going about their daily life. Running over to the portal, he stared through at the family, as they seemed to not notice his presence. This is my chance. Placing his hand on the surface of the image, he started to press his hand through, but found no matter how hard he tried, it would not go to the other side. Why isn't this working? Behind him he heard a voice and turned to see an Oni glaring at him with its masked features. As the creature ran at him, he dodged to the side, just missing being sliced by the bladed weapon being swung at him. What did I ever do to you? The thing didn't answer as it continued after him. Running out the door, Jeremiah hurried down the hall as more doors opened, letting more Oni out that started to pursue him. I thought this place was abandoned. Down the stairs he hurried, only to find a group of Oni waiting for him at the bottom, while those from above continued down after him. The metal of their blades glinted as they started toward him in a manner that told him they had no qualms about relieving his shoulders of his head. Just when he thought his life was over, two Onis at the bottom of the stairs flew to the side, then more started to join them as he spotted Momo making his way to the front. Behind him he heard a thunk, and turned to see an Oni fall as it was hit in the middle of the forehead with one of Lot's blunted arrows. Before he turned back, he felt a pair of hands grab him, then the world shifted as he was lifted up and carried down the stairs. The leather-clad Momo did not seem winded in the slightest by his added weight, as he and Lot hurried down the hall. As they went, Lot covered them, firing off her softened arrows at their pursuers. Outside, Momo set him down again as they all started to run together. I told you to stay in the basement, stated Lot as she looked at him with an expression like a mother chastening a child. You weren't there. I left a note telling you we were just getting supplies. I still can't read things. She shook her head. Sorry, I keep forgetting. Next time I'll be sure to tell you rather than leave a note. Inside an alley they took cover as the group of Oni ran past their hiding spot. When things were clear, they found an old car, which Lot fixed with a few borrowed parts from some nearby vehicles. With their new transportation, they started out of the city, heading further north and away from any chance of him finding new companions. Speaker, Chapter 15. Another skill Elijah had acquired from living with an alcoholic foster dad was how to make a meal go a long way. Whenever they acquired food, he knew what to do in order to make the most out of it. He'd even learned the best places to get extra clothing for those cold nights, and the safest ways and places to sleep from the year he'd lived on the streets. Funds had always been hard for him to procure, but with Jean's skills with numbers, she was able to work odd jobs to get the money. Working for small businesses and a few families, she used her accounting skills to analyze financial information, perform financial planning, or prepare financial statements. It did not get them much money, but enough so they could eat for a few days and have the money to travel to the next city. When she could not do this, Elijah used the skills his father had taught him in home repair to fix broken toilets in homes, family-owned restaurants, or other places that did not have the funds to hire a licensed plumber. While Elijah did this, Jane would talk with the residents and owners, sharing the message of the Source's love and soon coming. During the time of trouble, just before the Source and Word come, the righteous will be preserved by the protectors. But there will be no security for transgressors of the tablets. The source's protectors cannot protect those who disregard even one divine precept. That is why it is important we build our relationship with the source and the Word now, before it is too late and we have sealed our fate. The days are coming when there will be a famine in the land for the light. Now, while we have the light all around us, search it out before the darkness overshadows it. But even with the darkness, if you have attuned your eyes to seeing the light, you will be able to find it even through the shadows. But if you have not trained... She let the thought hang with the people as the vision of a wasteland appeared behind her, illustrating the drought that was soon to come upon the land. While many listeners seemed interested, a lot thought of her as a homeless nut, who they turned away with a pitied shake of the head or a disgusted sneer. "I don't know how you put up with it," said Elijah one day after they had been kicked out of a home. "Put up with what?" asked Jean through the paper. "The rejection. It is not me they are rejecting, but the source. What do I have to feel slighted about when it is their Creator who they are throwing from their home and closing their hearts to?" Hearing it in those terms made Elijah feel all the more upset at their rejection. After all the source had done for them, to turn him away as if he did not have a better life for them seemed ignorant and careless. He wished that they could see the full extent of the price that had been paid for them, and what they would be eternally rejecting by turning away from their Creator. "How do you not get discouraged?" inquired Elijah, as he thought over the vast majority of those who had rejected the source's message. "I can't say that I don't, but then the source reminds me that his words do not go out without accomplishing what he desires and achieving his purpose. Though one person may reject what I have said, maybe they will talk it over with someone else, and that person will hear the message. Or maybe a note I have written to a languishing soul won't touch their heart, but maybe after they have discarded it, another will pick it up and be blessed. The source has promised his words are never spoken in vain. All I have to do is speak them, and he will do the rest." Seeing the brightness in her eyes, he wondered if he would ever feel that assurance. To him, it all seemed completely hopeless. Everyone seemed to be set in their own ways and beliefs, and did not want to be turned from them. Even when the words were light, some would rather stay in the darkness, seeing the life it offered as easier for them. As she turned away to gain the attention of a passer-by, he let out a slow sigh. "I don't think I can do this." While their mornings were filled with work, whether spreading the message or performing odd jobs to support the message, their nights were filled with coldness. It was in the night that Elijah felt the heaviness of the life he had chosen most sorely. Then was when he worried about his decision to leave the comforts of his home and family to travel on the road. He had his whole life ahead of him, and yet he had left it all behind for a life of rejection and want. But when he looked at Jean, he remembered she was in the same boat. She too was young. She had the promise of a lucrative accounting career with her skills and family connections. She had even told him she was at the top of her class and would have been graduating soon. But the source had other plans for her, and she had chosen them over the life she had planned for herself. "Are you happier now?" he asked one night, as they sat close together to keep warm. "Do you ever regret your decision?" As it was too dark for him to see her notes, she responded with a shake of the head, and a look that told him she did not regret it at all. "So you are happier?" She nodded. "Always?" She shook her head. With the motion of her hands, he recognized from her speeches, she indicated with her body language alone, "Some times are harder than others, but I trust the source. He will get me through. He always has." He longed for the assurance he saw in her eyes. He himself still had not built that kind of trust in the source, to know that he would sustain him, or that this was even truly what he wanted for him. How could he know when everything seemed to be stacked against him? Shouldn't things have been easier? The next morning, the first thing he saw when he woke was a message left by Jean. "Everyone who wants to live a life for the source will be persecuted. It will not be easy, but the source will help us overcome, just as he helped the Word overcome. Do not let things discourage you from the work he is doing in you. Even as the world around you becomes deeper and deeper entrenched in darkness, hold on to the light. He will get you through." When he'd finished reading the note, he looked for the girl but could not find her. For a moment he started to panic, as he thought of all the terrible things that might have happened to her. Just when he was about to call the authorities, he found her standing with a group of homeless families around a trash can fire. She was talking with them, and her features were aglow as she shared the message of love with the tired people. Whereas usually only a few people lost their blindfold because of her message, these men and women were open to her words as they lost all their coverings so that they could more clearly see the light of her words. Seeing the way they hungrily accepted the love offered to them encouraged Elijah, as he thought how he'd like to see more people take a hold of the source's promises and power. And if the source said he'd get Elijah through this, then he would believe him. After all, if he did not have trust in the source, he had nothing. Dreamer, Chapter 11. That night they broke and made camp. As the older male found a sleeping spot a good distance from the other two, Ezekiel chose his spot close to the fire. As he drifted off, he prayed he would not have any dreams, but as soon as he closed his eyes, he found himself in a white room with a man in a glimmering white robe staring back at him. "You need to hurry," advised the man. "The forces of darkness are growing stronger, and there are souls still out there who have not seen the light. It is time you showed it to them." With that, the man held out a book, which glowed with a light that burned Ezekiel's eyes till he awoke from his dream to find it morning, or what passed for morning on that planet. With the entrance of morning came the renewal of sore feet as they started on their journey again. Along the way, Noah tried to perk up the group's mood, which was still brooding since yesterday. First, she tried a joke, which Ezekiel didn't get at all, must be alien humor. Then she tried a song, which she was sure they would know, but if Bob recognized it, he did not let on as he stared ahead. "Why don't we try some silence for a while?" recommended Ezekiel. Though she looked like she didn't want to do it, in the end she let out a long exhale and remained silent for the rest of the walk. Just before nightfall, they reached the tower, which looked even taller in real life. As in the dream, there were words written on it, but now, even without the light, he could not make out what it said. Though the letters looked slightly close to English letters, they seemed to be jumbled into some word that was not of his native language. "Where's the light from my dream?" asked Ezekiel as he looked around. "You better hope it doesn't come," replied Bob. "Why not?" He wouldn't respond, so Ezekiel looked toward Noah for the answer. "The light is a searchlight," explained the girl. "Over that way." She pointed in the direction the light had come from. "Is a prison. The light is used to search for possible runaways, or for those who might be trying to break in to free them." Giving the prison a wide berth, they made camp a half-mile from the tower, which Ezekiel could still see in the fading light of day. "Where do we go now?" asked Bob. Since they did not want to risk lighting a fire so near the prison, they had opted to not build one. In place of it, Noah had set up a rock in the middle of the camp. "What's that?" "The fire. You can't go camping without a fire." They were huddled around the rock when Bob asked a question as the cold wind blew around them. "I don't know," replied Noah as she looked toward Ezekiel, which seemed to be her go-to move. "The tower is all I saw," he answered. "You didn't dream about anything last night?" inquired Bob. Though he had, Ezekiel did not think the man in the glowing robe had any answers they needed, so they told him he didn't. "I'm sure he'll dream of something tonight," replied Noah with a confidence he did not understand for someone who had just met him. But as she'd guessed, that night, as he fell asleep, he found himself standing in front of a mountain. As he stared at the large rock, something started to seem off about it, and as he watched, the mountain fell forward, making him leap back as he was almost crushed by it. Looking back where the mountain had once been, he realized it had just been a billboard ad. Behind the billboard stretched a long road which seemed to go on forever as it wound around a large body of water. As he stared at the glistening lake, he heard a voice behind him. Just before he had turned to see who it was, he woke up. The first thing he saw was Noah, who was using his chest as a pillow as the rest of her body was curled up next to him. Past the girl, he spotted Bob, who was looking at him with a jealous expression as he got his things together. "It's time to go." Waking the girl, they gathered up their things and headed away from their camp. "I think I know where we're supposed to go," stated Noah after Ezekiel had told her about his dream. "I just don't know anything about the billboard." "I'm sure it's not important," replied the boy. "What are you talking about? Of course it's important. Everything you dream about is important." Wondering what he'd done to instill such confidence, he studied her closely as they walked along together. All he could come up with was that she was some kind of dreamer groupie. As they walked along, Noah chattering away about things he didn't understand, Bob grabbed his arm as he pulled him back from the girl. "You better not hurt her," stated the older teen with a threatening look. "What are you talking about?" Remembering back to the wire, he defended himself as he said, "That was an accident. It's not like I pushed her into the wire." "I don't mean that," though the memory seemed to upset him as he glanced at the girl to make sure she wasn't listening. "Even dreamers fall to the darkness. You better not let her down." "Listen, bub, I don't even know how I got here, let alone what any of what you guys says means." Bob's mouth twitched with annoyance as he told him, "Before you arrived, there was another dreamer. He had a protector, Noah. They worked together to fight against the darkness, but then he betrayed her, betrayed all of us. That's when she broke her sword." Ezekiel's eyes wandered to the broken blade which shimmered in the gray light. He was among those who tried to capture the false ruler's castle, but instead of giving his life for the cause, he gave his abilities. That's why her sword broke, because his light became darkness, and she had to find her own pieces of light through others. Looking back at the girl, Ezekiel wondered how she could go on after something like that. He could see why Bob was worried about him, but what Ezekiel didn't understand was why she was not. The sword she has now is made up of an assortment of different people's light, which makes it not as strong as other swords. If you end up betraying her as well, I don't think her light can handle another break. The words finally explained why Noah was never able to cut anything. It was a broken blade. The quilted blade should have been his first clue, he realized. Squeezing his arm again, as if to reinforce his point, Bob told him again, "Don't make the same mistake as the first dreamer, or I'll make you regret it." Ezekiel wanted to make some snarky comment, but could tell from the young man's face it would not be appreciated. As Bob joined Noah up ahead, Ezekiel stayed to the back, thinking over the young man's words. But more than that, he wondered about Noah. To still be going in the light after she'd had someone so close to her betray her, she had more faith than he did. But as Bob had wondered, if something else happened, could she handle another betrayal? Though he didn't know much, what he did know was that he did not want to be a part of helping her find out. Gazer, Chapter 12. In the morning, Jeremiah woke to find Lot staring out the back window at a spot through the trees. As she had not taken the time to ask his permission before climbing into the back seat and basically sitting on top of him, he asked, "What are you doing?" To which she replied, "I thought I saw something." "And why are you sitting on me?" She shushed him, which made him annoyed as he joined her in staring out the window. "What are you even looking?" Just then he caught sight of a movement through the trees, like a great black shape. What was that? "I think we're being followed." Turning back to Momo, she told the man, "I think it's time we got fancy." Nodding, the helmeted man pressed down on the gas as the car sped forward. Behind them, the black shape leapt out of the woods to reveal itself as a four-wheeled ATV. "What? Is that all it is?" asked Jeremiah as he laughed casually. "We can outdistance that in no time." "I'm not worried about him," replied Lot. "I'm worried about his friends." Before he could ask what she meant, the vehicle came to a sudden halt as they turned to see a log in the road. I was afraid of this. From out of the trees, more vehicles, like motocross bikes and other ATVs, came to encircle them. One especially threatening chopper, with a skull that looked like it could have belonged to the Tengu, stopped on the other side of the log. With their own vehicle stopped, the riders started to pull out weapons, ranging from shotguns and revolvers to bats and brass knuckles. The man on the skulled bike had an extremely terrifying machine gun with spikes along the top. Pointing his weapon at the windshield of their vehicle, he called to the occupants, "I suggest you turn off the engine and get out." "Bandits," breathed Lot with annoyance. It had to be bandits. "What do they want?" asked Jeremiah, as he felt like the guns were aimed at him alone. "Anything they can get their hands on. Don't tell them you're a gazer." After Momo had shut off the ignition, they left the vehicle with their hands raised in a non-threatening manner. Some of the riders seemed especially pleased at the sight of Lot, which made her expression all the more annoyed. "What's with the helmet?" asked one of the riders as he caught sight of Momo. "He has horrible helmet hair," replied Lot, "so he hides it." Her joke only confused the rider as he looked at his friends for guidance. "All right, enough with the gib," instructed the leader of the gang. "Give us all your valuables and we'll let you leave with your lives." Reluctantly, Lot handed over her bow along with her coat. As Jeremiah removed his own coat, he noticed Momo had not made a move to remove any of his outfit. "Hey," called one of the riders to the helmeted man, "you too! Take off the helmet or I'll shoot off your head." "I suggest you do what they say," instructed Lot. "And the ring," added another biker, as he noticed the small stone after they'd made Lot remove her gloves. This seemed to be the final straw for the girl, as her lips grew thin with displeasure. "You've gone too far," stated the girl. The man who'd called for the ring laughed as he said, "What? We make you mad, girlie?" "I'm not the one you should be afraid of." With her reply, she looked to Momo, indicating he was the one they should fear. When the man did not move, the bikers began to laugh. "Looks like he doesn't care, girlie." The man closest to Lot pointed his gun at her as he stated more seriously, "Ring, now, or we'll take it off your corpse." Before he could threaten her further, his gun popped up in the air, as if something had kicked his hand up. In the next moment, he bent over as he was kicked in the gut by an invisible force. While his friends looked on in confusion, they soon were thrown back from their bikes or had their heads slammed against the wheel of their ATV. Once they had all been dispensed with, Lot picked up her things, tossing Jeremiah back his coat as she told the bikers, "I told you not to mess with him." Looking back at Momo, Jeremiah found him to be seemingly in the same spot he'd been standing before, not having moved a muscle. But when the man turned, he noticed the dirt on the road around his feet appeared to have shifted, as if he'd rushed from the spot and returned many times. As Momo drove the car around the log and back onto the road, Jeremiah whispered to Lot, "What just happened back there? You're not the only one with special gifts." With a mysterious smile, her eyes told him that was all she would say. Sitting back, he looked toward the front seat at the man who was even more intimidating than before. He needed to get away from these people, and soon.